And welcome to Spotlight Radio on rhinoonair.com. This is Beth Rosen, your hostess, and I am back from a little hiatus. I had laryngitis, so it was a little hard to do the show, but I am back and doing great. And today we have a great show for you. It's called In the Director's Chair, and to help us out with that, we have an amazing director, also a producer, writer, and musician. His name is Mark Sklawer, and he has been exploring the connection between pop culture, spirituality, and mythology in his creative life.
Ooh.
Now, he has created the body tempo, which we'll talk about a little more with him when he comes on, and it combines shamanic rituals and dance at a nightclub and interactive theater. It's amazing. His work has been praised by Newsweek, The Village Voice, Time Out, and the Daily News. And to quote The Village Voice, Sklawer is the maker of ecstatic extravaganza. And Time Out says his work will catapult you into a cosmic odyssey. And the New York Daily News says his creations are the wave of the future. And they are 100% right. I have seen some of his work. It is related to the body tempo, which we will talk about in a moment. And it is literally out of this world, shamanic stuff, beautiful, and it will move you to ecstasy. So without further ado, let's introduce Mark Sklawer. Mark, say hello.
Hello, everybody out in internet radio land. How are you?
They're all over the world. They listen from everywhere, India, Australia, the U.S., Canada. So you're talking to the worldwide net.
Wow. I hear this worldwide net is really going to take off.
It is taking off.
Yeah, it's a newfangled thing. I love it.
Yeah. World stage. We're on the world stage on rhinoonair.com, so it's great. So, well, for our listening audience, just so you know, Mark and I are friends. We met at a networking event, and you know how I talk about how important networking is on this show, especially if you want to get into the area of arts and entertainment. So he is an amazing director, and we got very friendly because he started showing me his stuff on his iPhone, and I started showing him my stuff on my iPhone, and we had a lot of common interests. So I encourage all of you to get out there and start making contacts. And Mark agreed to be on the show so he could tell us a little bit about directing, because he's an amazing director. Mark, you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into directing?
Sure. I come from many different backgrounds and disciplines, and I originally worked as a photographer. Well, let me backtrack a moment. I grew up in the rock and roll first, I guess, 60s and 70s as a little kid and teenager, and I was very exposed to and very influenced by all the great classic rock people, the Beatles and the Stones and the Doors and all of that. And so originally I became a drummer at a very young age. And I started drumming around 10 years old, and I still play on and off today. And but I also had another love, which was the visual world, which was photography. And I went to the School of Visual Arts, and then I went down to the field and worked for a number of years in the fashion and industrial world as photography. And after I did that for a period of time, I basically traveled. I wanted to. I guess I was influenced by On the Road, even though it was many years later. But I was very influenced by seeing the world, traveling, and finding out who I am and what I'm about. And I just traveled around the country, ended up in California, and San Francisco. And in San Francisco, I started getting exposed to kind of a really crazy underground culture that eventually became the Burning Man culture.
What do you mean by underground culture?
Underground culture, that's a great question. I basically see that there's two prevalent cultures that coexist with each other and depend upon each other. There is the culture that you see on television, movies, listening music, just the mainstream culture that from Hollywood, from network shows, things that we see on an average day. And then there's a culture that is called underground, and the underground culture is always where innovation starts. It always moves. It's kind of like a seed in a sense. You're moving from the underground, underworld, under the earth, kind of down on the streets. It's a street culture. And the street culture always influences mainstream culture. It's a growth process. So when hip hop came out in the mid to late 70s in Bronx and Brooklyn, I mean, no one in their right mind would think it was going to take over the world like it has. So that shows up all time. Jazz has been like that. Folk music was like that. Even forms of classical music. It's pretty much been, that's the story. And eventually it spreads from the underground and it moves into mainstream and becomes the quote-unquote status quo. And then the next generation, the next wave of the underground comes up again. So I'm always inspired and influenced and always been involved in underground culture because I always find that's where the juice begins. Mm-hmm. And so when my first real exposure to that was in the 80s in the San Francisco warehouse event parties. And, San Francisco has the great honor of being the place where, I guess, when you consider like the modern like psychedelic rock coming out and the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane and, what definitely became hippie culture and how that influenced the world. Warehouse culture in San Francisco is where eventually became what is known as Burning Man. Burning Man came out from that culture. And I was present around that time in the early mid-'80s. I was living out on the West Coast, and even though I went to art school in New York City, and even though I was exposed to what was happening and, the punk era and the beginning hip hop era, it was somehow when I went out to San Francisco that it really started clicking for me. And it's like, oh, this is where things start happening. And the warehouse events in San Francisco were pretty amazing. First of all, the space and the size of these events were humongous. I mean, New York is such a small, tight-knit, well, not small, it's a very tight-knit place. Mm-hmm. But San Francisco, the space and the warehouse events were huge. They were like grand epic scales, and there were freaky stuff. There was like fire performances and art showings. And it was just a very, very wild, especially from a young person's mind, to be exposed to this. And it definitely inspired me. And then eventually moved back to New York City. Got seriously involved in music. I left the photography world behind. I was somehow not interested in the commercial fashion world, and I wanted. I mean, a lot of it actually was being inspired by that culture, and realizing, well, I want to be more of a deeper creative artist than I was being fulfilled in the fashion world. So I got involved in music, and I started playing in various bands. Had a certain level of, I guess, notoriety in the East Village scenes. And eventually met my first wife. Her name was Lorna Sinclair. And hey, Lorna, if you're out there.
Did she say, do you still talk to her?
No, but it'd be a good excuse to reach out to her again.
Okay.
Not for a weird reason. We just, things we drifted apart. And Lorna was kind of from a very different background. I came from Brooklyn, from Bensonhurst, the land of Saturday Night Fever, and just kind of a street culture and I don't know, I guess kind of like a street kid. Lorna, on the other hand, came from a very more refined Upper West Side. Her parents were very much involved in television and theater. Her mother was very much involved with the Yiddish theater, which is very important scene in New York City. Her father was a screenwriter. Actually, both of them were script writers and screenwriters for television and for films. And Lorna was a professional dancer, had a pretty great career out in Europe, in Paris, and just a very fine woman. And I remember on our first date, and it was wonderful, chatting, talking. We were, I think we actually headed back to my house, and then she said something that really shifted, pretty much changed my life. She said that theater was the death of ritual. And I was like, I should literally remember stopping in the middle of the street and go, whoa, I didn't know what it meant, but I resonated to it very deeply. I was like, whoa, what does that mean? And she went on to explain that part of her training was the performance art world, and she was trained by disciples of Grotowski and Artaud. I mean, Grotowski was a theater director from Poland, and he basically was bridging the gap between theater and ancient rituals and body connections. And his point was that when theater became prevalent in society, we started separating our religious and our spiritual experiences from our entertainment experiences. And it set up a discord that society has been trying to deal with since then. So, for example, in ancient, I guess, quote unquote, tribal societies, the shaman would be standing and telling stories around the fire, leading people into ceremony. It was their entertainment, but it had a religious, or I say more spiritual and nature-based connotation. We in Western cultures and more modern cultures over the years separated that for a number of reasons. And so I kind of look at the analogy that we go out on Saturday night and we party and we play hard, and then Sunday we wake up and we ask for forgiveness for our sins.
Oh no!
Well, I don't know what you're doing on best parties, but I don't wake up and ask for forgiveness.
We'll talk about record later.
Oh, yeah. Talk about underground world.
Awesome. But I think most people can get the understanding of that. And we as a culture, that's one of the reasons why we deify our celebrities and our rock stars, our actors. They represent the shaman. They represent the gods and the goddesses of ancient mythologies.
Well, they're creative forces. I mean, that's actually spirit manifesting itself. I mean, you know that. I mean, I know that. It's just you kind of let spirit flow through you, and your creations are amazing, and they naturally draw people in. It is mind, body, spirit, and so in some sense, it's still present in pop culture. It's weaved its way in to some extent. You know, it's whether someone sells out or not to just the advertising or market value as opposed to what's kind of arising from within, you know?
Exactly. I mean, it is prevalent. I mean, these mythologies, these spirits, these energies are always prevalent. What I see is, and what has started inspiring me is that for the most part, people are not aware of it. Mm-hmm. And like, for example, a nightclub experience. So people go to a nightclub and they'll come to a club, they're paying the money and dance. When I go to a nightclub, I see it as it's a sacred space. I see the doormen, I see everyone playing a role. So the doormen are, in my mind, the guardians of the underworld. And that's a symbol I mean, Joseph Campbell talks a lot about this kind of work. So I see that the doormen are the guardians of the underworld. You have to be worthy, either through dress or some kind of code or payment or through being on a list to be allowed into the sacred space. And the sacred space is the nightclub. And the nightclub represents the womb of the mother. It represents the earth. You go into a dark place, you hear bump, 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 thump, thump, thump. And what is that? That's really the mother's heartbeat. That's our heartbeat. There's lights, There are dark lights, there are trippy lights. So you're in another world, and sometimes you're under influence of drink or some other things that we don't talk about. And so you're in an altered state of consciousness, and it's a beautiful thing. What becomes interesting when I get inspired by is reflecting that back onto people, so we could play at a much higher level. We could create at a much different higher level. So when I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So going back to Lana, she started sharing these philosophies with me, and I started performing with her. And so here I am, this street kid, and growing up in rock, and then being schooled in punk and in hip hop and different underground scenes, starting to get involved in more refined culture, and started seeing these connections going on, and started hanging out with other folks, other like-minded people who believe in the same thing. It was just this, I guess it was the education I received in college, and then the education I started receiving in life and different experiences. So I started thinking about bringing all these different elements together and started seeing them. I don't know, the way my mind works, I see synergy in all things. And eventually I decided, well, what could I bring? How can I bring all these things together? How can I bring the visual world? How can I bring my music world? How can I bring my philosophical world? How can I bring my love of underground culture and of nature, and bring all those things together? And I naturally progressed into creating performances, and I would consider, I guess, ritual theater performances.
Is that your body temple?
No, the Bi Temple was my second incarnation. The first incarnation.
Well, you've been born again?
I don't know. Yes, I think we're all aren't we all born again?
I feel like this show is a trip.
Oh, well, we're just beginning.
Oh my God! I'm like, not what I expected, but I should have known from your videos. I mean, just for a listening audience, you have to see his videos to understand what he's talking about. They literally are a trip. He captures that world, but it's sort of like a higher consciousness. It's just this amazing music and costumes and fire and dance and lighting. It's like this cosmic explosion of energy. You just watch it and you're like, wow. So I could see where it's coming from, like how you took that from the underground up. But so just for our listening audience, so they come along for the ride, the trip, without getting lost. So how did Lana, is that her name?
Lorna.
How did she, like, where does she act as the bridge between that world and what you created? Because what you created is actually not like a nightclub. It's much, much higher consciousness. It's phenomenal. It's like ritual and theater and movies and lights and camera and music. It's like taking everything together. So how does she act as the bridge for you to get there?
Well, because basically where her background as a dancer was, Lorna was extremely well-trained dancer. And she was actually being trained by the Jinsky's teachers when they were rather old, and she was rather young. Jinsky, the great Russian ballet dancer, and they were grooming her to be a prima ballerina. She broke her heart when she discovered modern dance and Martha Graham and Isadora Duncan, and wanted to get involved in modern dance. And eventually that led her into, I guess, the 70s performance art scene. And eventually led her to Paris, which Europe has a lot more of that kind of culture, of that the bridge between avant-garde and popular culture is not that far as it is in America, at least up until this point. So it was not a big stretch. I wasn't really exposed to it, even though I read about it and kind of knew about the happenings and the 60s scenes and all of that. But she lived it and she was trained by it. So naturally, she started influencing me. So even though we're not together as a couple, I'll always be indebted for her, because she definitely shifted my direction in my life. I thought I was going to just do rock music and try to be a rock star, but I definitely moved into a whole nother realm and still incorporated all of that. So eventually I got inspired, and I don't know, I'm the kind of person who likes to organize things. So I started organizing these performances, these theater performances that initially began in outdoor experiences, in different magic festivals, and so they're more like nature-based gatherings. And I would organize these rather large theater experiences that would incorporate a couple of thousand audience members and lead them through the forest and have them have different experiences that were set up by different performers and different actors and different musicians. And I mean, having the stage of a forest is so amazing. And I would, being a drummer, that's my musical background, we would always end these performances with giant drum circles that would be fire. I mean, especially outdoors, you can't really have a major sound system if you want to get people to dance. So bring 20 drummers together and play some really hot beats, and people go crazy. It awakens these ancient, these archetypical things within ourselves, these archetypical feelings and memories of dancing around the fire that gets translated into the rock concerts and the nightclub world. So eventually I did that for a couple of years, and I started wanting to do this in New York City. And so in the 90s, I created a production company called Night Vision. Well, first of all, I am in the process of creating a couple of websites, so things are a little bit in the flux in that. But if people want to see some of these videos, you can look me up in YouTube, Mark Sklawer, under YouTube, and you'll be able to find me. There are 3 videos, and one of them is called The Ecstatic Night. That represented this company called Night Vision, and that was the first time I was aware of that anyone was at least in the modern sense, was trying to bring in the ritual, the theater, and the nightclub world.
Can you spell your name for them so they get it right?
Sure. Well, Mark with a K, M-A-R-K, and Sklawer is S-K-L-A-W-E-R.
Okay.
And then in about a couple of weeks, you can look up my website, which will be marksklawer.com. In the process of creating that, and then we'll be up and line in a couple of weeks. And I'll go through show everything.
And on that note, we have to take a short commercial break, so stay tuned, stay connected, and we'll be back with more on Spotlight Radio with Mark Sklawer. And welcome back to Spotlight Radio on rhinoonair.com. And this is Beth Rosen, your hostess, and we're talking to Mark Sklawer. We have him in the director's chair. So let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about night vision. Mark, you want to continue?
So night vision / Electric Earth was the first version of what later became Body Temple, and that was in existence for a couple of years. I put that on hold for a number of reasons, and in more personal and journey reasons. And Lorna and I separated. We got divorced, and basically was in another realm of exploration in my life. Well, in 2001, we all know what happened. 9/11 hit, and being a New Yorker, I was exposed to that experience, and it was pretty horrific. And we don't have to go into the history of that. But there was also something really beautiful about 9/11. And that was, at least in the first few months in New York City, there was a sense of coming together through adversity, through trauma, through stress, through this catastrophic event. New Yorkers came together in a way that's, well, New Yorkers always get a bad rap of being, hard people. But when it comes to an emergency, a tragedy, I don't know any other people to come together and show love and respect and coming together under one.
Yeah, I was there for 9/11, and, everybody looked everybody straight in the eyes. There was just such an openness after that. Even on the subways, it was just, there was this sense of we're all one there,
It was quite amazing.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was toying with the idea of bringing back or revamping the night vision. And at that point, after 9/11, about a month later, I was like, okay, it needs to exist again. So it was reworked. It became Body Temple. And I started working with a whole new crew of people, pretty much everyone knew folks. And it shifted, whereas night vision was basically a theatrical experience that included nightclub world. I wanted to bridge a little bit more into the nightclub world, so it became more of a nightclub experience, but with a theatrical and quote unquote ritual aspect to it. And so in 2002, we slowly started putting together this company. There were a lot of folks involved with it, and they are still close friends and collaborators. And so Body Temple basically was considered a holistic rave. So basically, we didn't serve alcohol. Um, we wanted to show people how you could express yourself through dance, through music, without necessarily being altered through chemicals. We just wanted a pureness to it. And not only did we succeed in having a pureness, it actually was a bit wilder because people were not inebriated, and it attracted a lot of people who are body conscious and yoga folks and just people who are just really fit and really want to go crazy, but not necessarily want to wake up with a hangover.
Right, right. I've done some of that. It's a lot of fun.
It's great. There's nothing wrong with having a wine or beer, but you want to try something different. I guess I'm always the kind of person, and I guess coming back to my underground roots was wanted to try to push the envelope and do something that's not quote unquote the tried and true. So if you're gonna have a nightclub experience, let's do it without the alcohol, and let's see how that goes without the substances of any sort. And within a year, we had a write-up in Newsweek magazine. They featured us in a couple other events, but we were basically the featured company in Newsweek magazine. There was a 2-page spread around us, and it really started inspiring folks, and we started growing. And we were in existence for about 4.5 years, and we produced I don't know, I would say about 100 events over that 4 years period, and they were just amazing experiences. Again, I had a company of people, about 40 of us involved. Some folks would come in and out, but I have a few folks who were just the mainstream partners in that. One was a woman named Parashakti, who comes from Israel, who is I guess a 5th-generation lineage from sacred rabbinical background, who came to America and got involved in yoga and Native American rituals, but also had a very strong dance and theater background, very well known in Israel. And she was, I would say, like I guess in a sense, my main partner in the Body Temple. There were other folks involved. There's a man named Fabian Al-Sultani, who became the main DJ involved in Body Temple, my brother, my comrade in arms. And I had my business partner named Samak, who ran a number of businesses, and he became, I guess, the man behind the scenes and helped make everything run and profitable and making sure everything was working properly. There was eventually became my second wife, Ivy Rothberg, Angelina, who was a main dancer and I guess my muse doing the Body Temple experiences. And there were dozens and dozens of people. Renee Collins, who was, I would consider, he's a Renaissance man, Renee, and he was a mystic and a juggler and a musician and an acrobat. So he brought in that kind of quality. And I mean, I could go on and on, the people who are involved. Again, if you go to the YouTube, Mark Sklawer, or if you go to bodytemple.info, even though we're not doing events at this point, you could check out our history and see other videos and learn more about what we created.
Yeah, and what's it like when you put on these like grand shows, because they are phenomenal. I'm a producer and I've been on set, so I know what must have gone into the making of those videos. That's like no small undertaking, and the editing is really phenomenal. It's very high tech, lots of lights and stuff like that, special effects. Can you talk a little bit about like what you go through on the set when you're directing something like that? Like you write it also, and you do the music and stuff. Can you talk about some of that? How you go about that?
Well, there's two sides to this equation. One is the pre-production side and the rehearsal side and the creation side. And then there's the actual, when we're actually doing the events and directing the events. And because it is theater and it's interactive theater, I'm taking from the folks of Grotowski and Artaud and these people. Peter Brooks. That basically, I never like doing events, theater events that the audience is sitting down and watching. It's an interactive experience. The theater is the center. The theater is you're involved and you're not. I mean, you could rest if you want to, but really you're the show. You're involved. Is the interaction, is participation. So the experience is happening all around you. So I'm directing, I'm performing, I'm partially behind the scenes, and I would say I am the eye of the hurricane. It is being in a hurricane, and it's very interesting, Beth. When I'm in pre-production mode, when I'm in creating mode, when I'm in writing mode, when in rehearsal mode, uh, I can sometimes become a nervous wreck. It's like all these different factors is coming together, and I have to, I'm trying to keep the reins going and keeping the focus. And even though I have working with amazing performers and dancers and actors and musicians, I am holding it together in terms of the back end, in terms of behind the scenes, as well as directing. My partner Zermatt was, the business head behind it, but still, I was involved with that aspect. So I become like a bit of a nervous wreck.
That's how you get it done, though.
That's how I get it done. But when I'm on stage, when actually the events are happening, and we're actually in the space doing the final rehearsals, it's really an interesting experience. The crazier things become, the calmer I am.
Yeah. I experienced that too because I'm an actor also, well, an actress. And I know it's a crazy wearing so many hats, writing, producing, so many things going on at the same time. But when I stepped in front of the camera, it was almost like I entered a new world. And you leave it all behind you, and it's like you're just somewhere else.
Exactly. You just go into another mode. I mean, I've never been in war, and I'm thankful for that. But I can imagine the sense that when you're in the midst of battle, everything just shuts down, and you just do what needs to be done. And so maybe it is kind of a war in a sense. I mean, our motto was we worked on a shoestring budget a lot of the times, or most of the time, and yet we put on amazing experiences that went beyond what our quote unquote budget was about. So it sometimes it brings the best out of people. It brings out a creative edge. It brings out an energy that if you try to hide behind fancy lights or explosions, you can hide behind that. But the substance of what comes out is from the individual people, and it's that bond. I would even say a sacred bond between the performer and the audience, and everyone becomes one. I mean, it might sound like a cliche, but I'm sure everyone has that experience when you're watching a movie or seeing a great performance or a music event in which you disappear and you become one with everyone. You're one with the audience, one with the stage, one with everything, and it becomes this one energy. It is a sacred experience. It is an ecstatic. It's an orgasmic experience. And
well, I'll definitely, if it's an orgasmic experience, I'll definitely have to come. I'll definitely have to come to one of your events.
Well, and we all experience that. We all seek that. Football is like that. Everyone's shouting, and we seek these ecstatic experiences. It's part of what our birthright is. It's part of what we are as human beings. It's what drives us. It's what binds us, and it can come through religious experience. It can come through nature, and there's nothing. That's why, as much as we all like watching movies on our devices and our computers and in our amazing home theaters, there's nothing like watching a comedy in a crowded movie theater that's really brilliant and everyone's laughing their butts off.
So wow, that stuff sounds amazing. I mean, that's like an amazing journey. So what are you working on now? Like, what have you got in the works now? Are you doing a full length film, or who are you working with?
Well, after Body Temple had his era, we were together for 5 years, and we all moved on to different experiences. And one of the things I wanted to do was take what I did with Body Temple and bring it to a much larger format, a much larger arena. And the next progression for me was to get involved in film. And So I wrote this script. It was basically a story that was in my head for about 10 years and kind of worked it out. There's some elements that I kind of produced in Body Temple. But I created this script called Electric Visions, and it's the first script I wrote, and it's getting some nice buzz from people who work in the field. And it's a story. It's a retelling of the Dionysian and the Persephone mythologies in contemporary New York City art and music culture. So I kind of play with the idea that it would be like a Harry Potter film if Harry Potter was directed by Martin Scorsese in the 1970s in New York City.
Another trip.
It is a trip. It's and basically Dionysus you would say is the personification of the rock star, and it's it's that wild Dionysus is the god of theater and of wine and ecstasy. And I wrote the script over about a year, and it's my love note to New York City. It's this wild journey that brings these two heroes, hero and a heroine, into this amazing underworld, psychedelic, wild journey into the streets of New York City. So it's completely based in a kind of a hard edge side of New York, as well as a fantasy and mythology and mystical side. I really try to work on both of those things together to really make it, you make both those things flow together, and one feeds into the other. Because I definitely look at New York City as a place, it's like a mythic place. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And New York City is heaven and hell. You got beautiful, beautiful, amazing culture, and you got like street and roughness and poverty and crime. I don't know any other place in the world that really has both of those extremes like within blocks of each other.
Right, right.
So Electric Visions is very much about that. It's a really wild, in-your-face story, and I'm in the beginning stages right now. The next step, which is basically in development stage and finance raising stage, and so that's one of my main projects. The other project is a documentary I am working on, and it was kind of related to Electric Visions. I met a gentleman at a coffee place. Actually, it's a place in Brooklyn called the Tea Lounge. So it is a plug for the Tea Lounge. It's a great place in New York. And the Tea Lounge is an amazing hotbed of creative folks. And one of them was a man I met named Howard Bloom. And we just became friends, and a really interesting gentleman. And I found out that Howard is the most successful public relations person in music history. And Howard was the man who made Prince and Michael Jackson and Bob Marley, Joan Jett, John Mellencamp, AC/DC, disco, punk, and hip hop household names, or even made them into a greater name. You never would have heard of Joan Jett. You never would have heard of Prince, most likely without Howard's work. And Howard is a science nerd. He's a man who is a genius, actually, and he's written a number of books, and he basically used mathematics and applied biology and applied physics in the field of public relations and revolutionized public relations. He read my script. He really dug it. He really said, "This is the kind of thing that I would do. You really understand what I'm working on. I want you to do a documentary about my life." And I was like, really? It's like, okay. It's like he was insistent, and a man like Howard, you won't say no to. And so not only one film, but I'm working on two film projects, and they are definitely related to each other. We're doing Howard's story, which is basically how a science nerd from upstate New York became involved in the biggest musical acts of the latter part of the 20th century. And it's a wild, wild story. It's an unbelievable story, except it's true. So in a sense, both of these film projects, there's definitely a relationship. It's about popular culture. It's about the mythic making of celebrities and of stars, and our hunger as a society for this type of experience. And it's both larger than life stories. And so what I'm working on right now is taking all my life experiences up until this point and creating a production company that will focus on mythic storytelling. these two films are two of the initial films. I have about 5 other projects into various stages that I'm looking to be created. I will at one point rework Body Temple into a more theatrical experience. And I also have a musical side of me. As I have a couple of music projects, and so that's another whole other element that I'm very much involved with, and basically putting all these things together as one package.
Do you have any music that you want to play on air?
Sure. This is a collaboration with a woman named Andrea Sperling, and the name of the project is called Seven Dreams. And we just about finished an album worth of material, which is in the mixing stage. We have a couple of tracks that we can play now. One of them is a song called "You Got What I Want," and this is a little bit of that.
All right, let's play it right now. You Got What I Want by Mark Sklawer.
I was the girl you watched walk down the
Wow, that's really cool. It has a really nice beat to it. It's kind of like...
Thank you.
Yeah, it makes me want to get up and dance.
Awesome. Yeah, she comes, again, I like bringing in different elements together. So Andrea comes from the singer-songwriter school of thought from the 70s, like Joni Mitchell, and I'm coming from the beat, so somehow we're meeting in the middle. So she's very much about the poetry and the language, and I'm just into making it loud and face sounds. And here's another track that I really love. It's called Fly Away.
Wanna fly, I want to fly away. Ooh. Wanna fly, I want to fly away today. Ooh. Hello, hello, goodbye, goodbye. I'm trying not to cry. Oh, changes are coming. Hello, hello, goodbye, goodbye. I promised myself I would not cry. Oh, ooh. Sailing on the wind, sailing on the sea. Ooh. Sailing on the wind, sailing on the sea. Goodbye, goodbye, I'm trying not to cry. Oh, changes are coming. Hello, hello, goodbye, goodbye. I promised myself I would not cry. Oh, ooh. Sailing on the wind, sailing on the sea. Ooh. Sailing on the wind, sailing on the sea. Wanna fly, I want to fly away. 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 Wanna fly, I want to fly away
That's another great song. That has more of a techno beat, right? A little techno.
More of a techno with a lot of world drums. Being a drummer, it's all about the drums. So I kind of like describe the song as around the world in 4 minutes. It would kind of take people through a wild journey around the world in 4 minutes. And so that's what that song about. And then we have a whole album worth of material that basically bridges the sounds of I don't know, dance music of the last 20 years, as well as singer-songwriter mentality. So that's another project that's going to be debut later on this summer. And you could find out more about me at themarksklawer.com. It's another little plug. Check me out.
We're all about plugging on this radio.
Oh my God! You gotta sell yourself. This is one of the things I learned from Howard Bloom. That Howard is all about, and I really love what he says. That if you have a message to share with the world, it is your duty as a human being to share it. It was an important message, a message that could change people and inspire people's souls and their lives. You got to do everything you're in your power to promote yourself. Otherwise, you're shortchanging the world. And so this whole idea of selling yourself and commercialization, it's kind of a bunch of hooey. I mean, if the Beatles weren't able to market themselves or have people market them in the way that they became, you never would have heard about them.
Right. You got to find, yeah.
If Einstein, if Newton, if Galileo, if all these people, scientists, were not able to somehow have themselves marketed or market themselves, like Thomas Edison, who was a great marketer, you never would have heard these people. So I'm a big believer in that, and I'm learning from the master's feet, and I'm very grateful to be connected with Howard. And because I am working with Howard, and the people that he's worked with, it's allowing me to connect with some of the move shakers in the music and the film world. And I'm at a point in my life in which I spent most of my adult life and living and creating and working in the underworld, the underground movements. And now I really want to take what I've learned into the masses, into the mainstream. I feel very strong. What I have to share is a beautiful experience, and people who see my work, who see the Bi-Temple, who read my script, are really inspired by it. And who am I not to let people who be inspired by the stuff that I was inspired about? Because really, Beth, as an artist, we don't create what we create. When we try to create what we do, we just get in the way, and our ego gets in the way. When we are inspired, we let whatever you want to call it, God, divine nature, spirit, the muse, move through us. And that's the purest form of expression. That's what we're here are about. Ultimately, we're here to contribute to the world. Ultimately, we're here to contribute to humanity, and our missions in life should really leave the world a better place than where we found it. And so that's always inspired me. And I hope one day that I inspire younger people the way I was inspired by, I guess, my masters, my elders, and hopefully I can leave a legacy that will do that. And I think that's the best that anyone as an individual can do. I hope to inspire the people who look at my works and my experiences in my films and my projects as the way I was inspired by people that I grew up with. And I feel as an artist, as a human being, really as a person on this planet, that's the best that I can do and that anyone can do, that we can leave this world a better place than we found it. And then that goes on and on and on. So culture and society and civilization will continue to become greater and greater. And I know that we have a lot of problems right now in the world. There's a lot of stress and turmoil and breakdowns and meltdowns and all kinds of things. But it's always in these times that something new arises. I mean, going back to the mythology, bringing it back to the full circle, is the stories that we grew up with. At the darkest hour, the hero comes in, the heroine comes in, something comes in, an energy comes in, a new force comes in, and it saves. The old dies and the new comes in. And I really believe on a global level, that's exactly what's going on. And we are in a great upheaval, and the opportunities for that growth to move to the next phase of our evolution is really upon us, like right now. And that's what I want to do with my creation, and to inspire people on that level with my stories, the stories that come through me. And I, if everyone would do that, everyone would take that kind of mindset, we would very quickly able to shift the conversations of the world in a very quick way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, sometimes we can get stuck doing things that we think we're supposed to do, and that's when life becomes really difficult. It's like we're sort of swimming against the tide, and while at times that's okay to live your life that way, it's exhausting. Sometimes you just gotta follow the wave and it'll lead you to a better place, and that's sort of like when you just kind of go with the flow and do what makes you feel good, then and to be with people who make you feel good, and to sort of settle into a career where you can thrive, and you not only respect yourself, but other people naturally respect you without you having to try and force it, then that's where you're in the right place. And that's when doors start opening, when you start making connections and you start to just kind of ride the wave. It's just, you're in the right place.
Right, you're like a surfer. It's that balance between I guess the masculine and the feminine. It's like you know where you're going to that direction, and nothing's going to stop you. But then you have to flow with it, because if you try to go straight in a massive wave, it'll just crash, and you'll crash and burn. But if you don't have a direction where you're going either, then you just got kind of swayed by whims of fate. So it's really riding that edge. It's between both.
Right. So, we're coming to the end of our show. So do you have any parting words of wisdom? Anything you want to leave our audience with? Any aspiring film directors, filmmakers? Just something that you think will be a pearl of wisdom they could take with them for the rest of their life?
I'll put on my Buddha robe. Hold on one second.
Oh, you don't need to be the Buddha to be wise.
I know, I'm just being silly. Honestly, you started that direction. You have to listen to your heart. You have to listen to that voice inside, really follow that voice. And it's Joseph Campbell talked about following your bliss, and it is a cliche. It could be a cliche, but it's really true. Every time that I really listen to what I believe is my heart's intention, I never go wrong. When I resist it, then I suffer. So we got to be brave enough as people to listen to those wild impulses, whatever they are. I mean, as long as they're not destructive, we need to follow that wildness, because that's the divine speaking through. So be courageous in your vision. Be courageous in what you want to create in this world. Be outrageous. Be insane. Be wild, because look at all the greats. Look at Steve Jobs. If he followed the straight and narrow, we never would have had Apple.
Yeah, we wouldn't be making movies.
Yeah,
at least I wouldn't.
Right now. This whole process is courtesy of Apple. Oh, okay, no plug-in.
Yeah, well, Steve Jobs, he changed my life. He was an amazing person. So
exactly. So he, just follow your bliss and go for it. And right, and you're so right, Beth. Is network and meet people and be out there in the world. Do your homework, create your magic. Do your cloistered background. Be the hermit writing your masterpiece or creating, and then go out into the world and sell your ass off.
I might have to bleep that.
and then sell your butt off.
Thank you. Well, can they find you on Facebook? Can they befriend you on Facebook?
Sure. Befriend me on again. My Mark Sklawer, MarkSklawer, will be up in about 2 weeks. You could friend me on Facebook. That's awesome. You can look me up on YouTube. It's Mark Sklawer, and you could, if you want to look what I did with Body Temple, check out bodytemple.info. And there are people could write to me through any of those sources. There's contact information, and I would love to hear feedback. I'd love to hear what else people are up to. I'd love to have any connections, anyone's inspired who could bring something to the table. I'd love to hear from you. And so yes, please. make it interactive.
That's what we're all about. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for being on the show. It's a pleasure to have you. It was a real trip, let me tell you.
Oh, thank you, Beth. Well, you inspire me because you're a trip yourself.
Okay, well, on that note, we are going to say goodbye to our listening audience. And remember, you can also be on this show, Spotlight, on rhinoonair.com. And if you have your own music and you would like to showcase it, you can submit it to rhinoonair.com. You can go to the website and fill out the submission forms and take it from there. And in the meantime, have a magical, mystical week, and look me up on Facebook too, Beth Rosen, and check me out, bethrosen.com. I also have a new website that's going up, and I started blogging there, so you can start visiting. It's called The Back Door to Hollywood, backdoortohollywood.com. And we'll be featuring a lot of talent there and a lot of tips on how to get going towards your dreams. And we're even going to get Mark on there to do a little blog at some point. So thank you so much, Mark. And, to our listening audience, definitely seize the day and live your dream. This is Beth Rosen and Mark Sklawer signing off of Spotlight Radio.